As our nation prepares for the 20th year commemoration of the events of September 11th, 2001, our guest today, Jonathan Hile, will speak to us about the sense of unity this nation had in that aftermath and what he hopes can bring us back together. Hello and welcome to this edition of Press Conference. I'm your host, Jim DeLorenzo, the principal of Jim DeLorenzo Public Relations. You can find me online at jimdelorenzo.com. If you would like to get in touch with me with any questions about public relations or about today's show, please feel free to give me a call at 215-266-5943 or email me at jim@jhdenterprises.com. You can also find me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. As mentioned, my guest today, Jonathan Hile, was a Louisville, Kentucky firefighter who traveled to the World Trade Center site immediately after September 11th, 2001, to work alongside the teams in rescue and recovery. He spent 8 days working 16-hour shifts at the World Trade Center site, supporting crews from New York's Engine 7, Ladder 1, and Rescue 1. The events of that day and those days still resonate with Jonathan as he has expressed his greater appreciation for his own life, his family, and his work. He is now the CEO of Valor Safety Pros, a leading safety and risk management consultation service for construction, heavy industry, mines, and manufacturing. I'm pleased to welcome Jonathan to the show today, calling us from the Gulf Coast of Florida. Jonathan, you've had some interesting experiences, and we had an interesting conversation last week as we were getting ready for this show. And I'm really interested in hearing your story and what you have to say about 9/11 and how our nation changed. There was one quote I want to read back to you that you said to me in our first conversation. And you said that during our nation's darkest hour, its people shine the brightest. Could you kind of build on that and tell me, what inspired you to go from Louisville to New York City in those dark days, and what were some of the things that you encountered in that period of time?
Thank you very much for having me on the show, first of all, and I'm very honored to be able to share my story and to be able to, keep the memorial of the events of that day alive and help people remember the great sacrifice and the loss of life that occurred on that day. As far as what inspired me to go, it's hard to put a finger on that. It's hard to say, why. But I knew that I needed to be there. I couldn't sit back and watch the suffering that was taking place, and to look at the total scope of destruction and the work that needed to be done, knowing that just wasn't left to the people of New York to figure out. And of course, FEMA was actively involved in bringing people from around the country up to New York to help relieve the folks that were there working at the World Trade Center site, because it just was overwhelming, and that's probably an understatement to say what had to be done and what needed to be done, and not only the physical toll of the work, but also the emotional toll and the spiritual toll on the people who were there. It was a pretty life-changing experience for me.
What was the feeling amongst you and the people that you were working with? How intense was that feeling, and how did you get through those days?
And we were there for each other. And the outpouring of love, especially from the people of New York, just everyday citizens, how much they just appreciated everyone that was there and what they were doing. It really was amazing. They were right there with us, and a lot of those people on that day, lost somebody, if not, a lot. And for them to have the compassion to still give in their time of loss was pretty powerful. We were there for them, and they were there for us, even after everything that they'd been through. And it's something that I'll never forget, just the simple kindness. We went over to Rescue 2, which was a firehouse in Brooklyn. They had a pretty heavy loss in that firehouse, and just wanted to see if there was anything that, they needed, anything that we could do. It was just a thing we had some time in the evening, and I normally would hang out at the firehouses there in Lower Manhattan. But my friend Matt Keith, who also from Louisville went to New York, had gone and stayed there just to be there and do whatever he could. If that meant keeping the house clean and washing fire trucks, that's what he did. And he self-mobilized. He went up there, on his own. And just, he couldn't, like me, just couldn't sit back and watch and not be involved. And knowing that there was hurt going on, and having something to give to try to ease that pain of those people. So we went over to Rescue 2, and someone had made them a cake, and the first thing they did was started serving us cake, and it brought me to tears.
Sure.
Here these guys were completely embattled and dealing with such staggering losses, and they gave us every hospitality that you could imagine, and no matter how much we refused. And there was people that I just encountered every day up there that were kind and, hey, can I buy you a coffee this morning? Or, that walked all the way down from their job or apartment and came down to the lines of the site with bags of food and just said, hey, we want to, we'd like to give you guys this food if you'd like. There were so many volunteers there from the Red Cross and the Salvation Army that served food every day, from the North American Mission Boards, the Southern Baptist Disaster Relief teams that were there doing laundry for people, that were there cooking food for people. It was really, really, really an amazing outpouring. And, in the day-to-day interaction with the people of New York, hearing their stories of what had happened, and seeing those eyes go cold and dark and have that 1,000-mile stare as they're reciting, I was right here in my apartment and the plane was right there.
Wow.
Stories just like that. Stories about how the lobby man for Gateway Plaza, when the collapse started occurring, he was running out into the street, grabbing people and pulling them into the lobby of Gateway Plaza. And one of the residents that lived there that we helped go in and try to salvage some for personal belongings. And I'll get back to that story in a minute, kind of what we did. She said, all I remember is he grabbed me and he was pushing me towards the door, and I looked back and he was gone.
Wow.
Those were the heroes, that people don't hear a lot about. There were taxi drivers that were driving people out, and there were people on boats that were getting people out. And then there was normal everyday citizens. And like one of the images that I think stays fixed in my mind is those people all in business suits that were completely covered in dust from the collapse, all having their arms around each other, walking out of that disaster, really embodied what I believe what I believe we are and who we are as Americans. And even here, back home in Louisville, after it happened, people were a lot more quicker to open the doors and were a lot more conscientious and thoughtful of one another in the things that they did just on a day-to-day basis, because there was something inside of us, all of us, that was hurting.
Yeah.
And just seeing that and knowing that we'd been attacked and what was going to happen next, everybody was afraid. And I think we all just kind of held on to each other a little bit tighter, and it forged an amazing unity and an amazing love in all of our communities because of that. And even though there were new restrictions that were coming in from the Patriot Act and certain things that we were going to have to be doing now on when we traveled or flew, everybody was happy to do those things because they knew that it meant protecting us from something like that happening again.
And I think that's an important point, Jonathan, that you make, and you've mentioned that we were given a gift in the days and hours after 9/11, that we came together. There was this sense of unity. There was this sense of we all belonged to each other, and we were going to help each other out. We were going to do the things that we needed to do to get back to some sense of normalcy and stay together and help each other out. And I think in our conversations in the last week or so, you've mentioned that you feel like that we've lost we've lost track of that gift.
Well, there was, for years after September 11th, there was the credo, never forget. And I don't think that was meant, when that was said, I don't think it meant don't forget what happened that day. I think, what was meant was don't forget how this changed us. Don't forget how we all came together. Don't forget how our young men and women went to war in Afghanistan to hunt down Al-Qaeda and the Taliban because of this event. That people put their lives on the line to fight for this country. And they did so willingly. There was no hesitation from the men and women who were going to Afghanistan to fight the fight against terror. And we all knew that we were going to have loved ones that were going to war. And that was another part of it. That was another part of it that brought us all closer together. I had a really good friend of mine, Justin McKinnon, who was an Army Ranger, and he served with the Special Forces Detachment doing forward operating in Afghanistan. And knowing that, he may not come home, luckily he did, but there was a lot that didn't. The sacrifice, and it sounds cliche, and I've got this picture that was taken at Engine 7 Ladder 1 that has that on there, and it says, no man hath any greater love than this, and he would lay down his life for his friends. Remembering that, not forgetting that. And how we rebuilt afterwards, in the face of it all. And did so honoring those that we lost on that day.
Sure.
And, we always, kind of focus in on the firefighters and the other police officers and Port Authority that gave their lives that day protecting others. But there was, a staggering toll. Those numbers are 10% of the staggering toll of innocent lives that were taken that day. And many of those fought to save themselves and others to the bitter end.
Wow. I want to continue our conversation, Jonathan. I appreciate your time with this today, and we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk some more with Jonathan Hile about remembering the events of 9/11 and the spirit of unity that we all had and we hope to have again.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Boardwalks built for fun. Legendary rock and roll clubs.
This is how we do it. Hip hip hop.
Casinos by the ocean.
Hip hip hop.
Now that's New Jersey. 130 miles of beautiful beaches. Solid rock. And everything in between.
Look in the window.
Now that's New Jersey. Plan your New Jersey trip at visitnj.org. Waves of fun. Nights of excitement. And a trail of memories. Now that's New Jersey.
Welcome back to Press Conference. My guest today is Jonathan Hile, a Louisville, Kentucky firefighter who went to the World Trade Center site in the days after September 11th, 2001. And we're talking about that experience and those memories and the unity we all felt as a nation in those in our darkest hours, as Jonathan and I have been talking about. Jonathan, when we look back, here we are at the 20th year anniversary, I hate to say anniversary, commemoration, if you will, of that event and the events around it. What are some of the things that you see when we talk about never forget and we talk about unity? What are some of the things that you have seen that have kind of faded away in the 20 years?
Well, we as Americans, we kind of made this promise and carried the banner of never forget, that we would never forget. And we talked about, kind of what that meant. But sadly, there's a whole generation out there today that are just too young to remember that this nation was attacked and innocent lives were taken and brave souls went forward to fight for our freedom and to protect that freedom and to make sure that those who were responsible would never be able to do that again. And we went to war in Afghanistan to do that. And I often wonder, with everything that's going on in the news now regarding Afghanistan and how that's so polarizing, if people even remember why we were there to begin with. Sure. And I'm sure that there is I'm not sure, I read posts and there's a generation out there that, think that we shouldn't be there, we shouldn't be occupying that country, that we shouldn't have a military presence there. And the reason that the presence was there is that the war was never really over. If it were, Al-Qaeda and the Taliban would not have taken over Afghanistan again.
Yeah.
We were there to keep it at bay without hunting them down, without actively pursuing and engaging them, on the offensive. But we were there to protect what was put in place to help keep those organizations at bay and unable to strike. Again,
Yeah.
we talk about, terrorism and what it does. And I don't think that the generation today really understands that fear. Because there was a time after that happened, and I'm sure every American would agree with me that we were all waiting for what was going to happen next.
Yes, there was a lot of fear in the country, and there were a lot of fear. And the other thing that we remember, Jonathan, is that we had the anthrax situation in the later in that fall. We had alerts that things might be going to happen next, and we had potential situations on planes and in our cities. And there were a number of different seemingly unrelated incidents, but it kind of kept us all in fear. But it was a legitimate fear because we had already seen what happened on September 11th. And
not only that, but there were attacks in Europe,
yep.
all across Europe, following that.
And as you say, I think there are people who don't remember that because they were too young to remember that. And there are people who want to forget that and see that as something, we're beyond that now. And I really don't think we are beyond that. I just think that we've done a really good job of trying to stay alert and keeping things going. Beyond politics, though, how can we as people be vigilant, be remembering, be proactive, and be aware of what we had, what we need to keep, and what spirit we need to keep alive?
That's a difficult question to answer. That would, I think if I had that solution, I'd probably win the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah.
But in my business in safety and risk management, we have this this philosophy called the catastrophic theory of change, or the theory of catastrophic change. It's worded a couple different ways, but basically what it means is that we don't change unless something bad happens. And the way around that is being proactive and being educated and being wise to the reality of what could happen if certain precautions or measures or controls aren't put in place. I guess, to me, I want to get back to the fact that, it was because of the events of September 11th that brought about our presence in Afghanistan. It was because of the lives that were horrifically taken that day in New York on Flight 93, I believe it was, and at the Pentagon, that we went in pursuit of our enemy, which was in Afghanistan. And for us to be pulling out and then to have the loss of 13 young Marines and Navy personnel's lives on the tail end of that makes it all so makes it all in some way meaningless. That everything that happened and all the lives that were given and the brave souls that gave their lives for freedom and for our country, and why they were there, and trailing that all the way back to that brisk fall morning on September 11th. It almost gives me the feeling that people have forgotten
Yeah.
what what happened in this country 20 years ago and how it changed us, and actually how it changed us for the better, how passionate people became about service. There was this cool concept that's still involved today called CERT. It's Community Emergency Response Teams. And let me tell you something, when I got back from New York and being involved on the fire department, we trained these CERT teams. And the number of people that wanted to come out and know what to do in the event of some type of disaster, whether it be terror or a natural disaster or otherwise, they wanted to be ready to do something. They didn't want to feel as helpless as they did on that day ever again. They wanted to be empowered to do something when their community needed them. And that was something else. And that to see people rise up and want to be involved in any way they could just made me so proud to be a part of that and what brought that about. And I think that love for one another as people, as human beings, as Americans, has sadly diminished. And I would just try to tell people to reflect and to share what happened on that day and the days following and the years following with their children, and to educate them about the day that our country was attacked. And how we rose up, not only to go fight them in war, but how we rose up as a people to care for one another and take care of one another, and support one another, and this outpouring of love that was happening. It was an energy like nothing else that I personally had ever experienced in my life, and it was beautiful.
I think I agree with you 100%, Jonathan, and I think hopefully conversations with people like yourself and conversations with our loved ones, if we can all have an interesting remembrance and share our feelings from that time, I think on a grassroots level, we can reinstill some of that unity to the people who really want this country to be unified and really want this spirit to come back. For some of us, it never left. For others, it kind of faded away. But I'm hopeful that through our conversation today, maybe some of our viewers and others can see and maybe reflect on that. And perhaps this is a good thing that has happened in the last few weeks that will bring us back to that sense of importance and that sense of honor and that sense of respect for what happened, and a sense of let's try to be better people because of that.
I think that the recent events in Afghanistan have brought everything full circle, and for people like us to try to wrap it all up, from what happened on that day and how we felt the days after, and what the country did and what that brought about, not only with us going to war in Afghanistan, but what it brought about within our country and within its people, and bringing that all the way around full circle, and what changes that brought about in our country. And now to see where we're at, we got some backpedaling to do.
Yeah.
And, I know we don't have much time, but my grandfather was a senator in Kentucky, and he had on his grave in Albany, Kentucky, he had this phrase, and it went like this: "What we do for ourselves and the world remains. What we do for ourselves alone remains, but what we do for ourselves alone." Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional.
It's okay.
What we do for ourselves alone remains, but what we do for others. Gosh, I'm falling apart here.
I apologize. I'm sorry to that.
What we do for, I'm going to try this one more time. You guys can hopefully edit this up. What we do for ourselves, I'm going to just pull up the picture.
Okay. I appreciate that, John. Please.
Yeah. Okay. What we do for ourselves dies with us, but what we do for others and the world remains and is immortal. And I think that phrase, to me, should become something, and people should search for their own phrase, their own why, their own meaning, to realize that the world needs us more now, maybe than it did then.
Thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate the spirit and the passion and the emotion you have shared with us. I think you've given us a lot to think about, and I want to thank you for sharing that with us. And I encourage our viewers to take that to heart. And I really am grateful for Jonathan's words today, and I hope all of you heard something that you can relate to there, and I look forward to seeing you all again here on Press Conference very, very soon. Take care.